Hello and welcome to the session on reigniting students' love for reading through choice and our new classroom libraries. I'm Stacy Hammer. I'm the ELA specialist for Aledo ISD, kindergarten through 12th grade. Hopefully, who you are sitting at your desk or a device, wherever you are, you are a secondary ELAR teacher in Aledo, and I am so excited that you chose this course on top of everything else that you're studying this summer. We're going to have a great panel discussion, but before we do, I want us to jump into the what and why of balanced literacy at the secondary ELAR classroom level, and also the need and importance for student choice reading. All right, so a little bit about this quick mini lesson before we get into our panel discussion. One, we're going to talk about what balanced literacy looks like in the secondary ELAR classroom. Two, we're going to talk about what student choice reading is and why it's so crucial. Then we're going to get into TEKS alignment because, yes, our new 2017 standards that go into effect for high school next year and went into effect last year for middle school directly support student choice reading. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how to get started. It is so important that we hear from people who have been navigating this course for us before we got started. All right, so when we talk about balanced literacy in the secondary ELAR classroom, balance is not something that you just stumble across. You have to intentionally create it. And when you talk about balance, you're implying that there's more than one thing that is important. We tend to think of balanced literacy as happening at the elementary level, but I'm here to show you exactly what we mean when we advance it to the upper grades. The reading wars that have gone on for decades in the studies of literacy have contentiously discussed one approach over another. We have our phonics approach that really emphasizes a part to whole type of thinking where students really need to master, or the thinking is that students really need to master the sounds that letters make in combination prior to enjoying a text, prior to getting their hands on and trying to interact with and comprehend a text. Conversely, the whole language approach says, by all means, no. Yes, they've got to learn those parts, but we do it in a whole two-part way where we put the books in students' hands and we want them to fall in love with reading. And if they're not actually correct in their comprehension because they're just looking at the pictures and they're decoding the words that they can, that's okay. That'll come later. We just want them to fall in love with reading. And of course, there's also a lot of middle ground between these two extremes where, we're trying to strike that balance. That's where the phrase balanced literacy comes in. And at the secondary level, what this looks like, since we already have readers who, for the most part, have got decoding down and fluency, then we're really analyzing closely texts that we're all sharing, right? We're still trying to promote fluency, comprehension, and content knowledge, but we're really looking at reading as work. We want to drill down and we want to uncover and unpack what the author has done to create these sentences, paragraphs, and whole texts. Again, conversely, whole language or holistic approach educators really vie for this love of reading, that we really need to put books in students' hands that they're going to be engaged in. They need to choose. They need to find relevance in what they're reading. And again, we have to be able to strike a balance. If we want to look specifically in Aledo, on the one hand, we have springboard units that would be the same for all of our grammar, all of our conventions, all of our vocabulary and discrete skills is packed into these units where the entire class shares texts. We also come at it from data-informed practice and assessment because, of course, we're trying to prepare them to master those grade level standards, and then we're also want them to do well on our high-stakes assessments. On the other hand, a student choice reading and response or an inquiry and research approach really highlights the need for relevance, really highlights the needs for maintaining that joy of reading as students age. So we need to figure out how to strike that balance. So here I've got a quote from a great article that the International Literacy Association put out a few years ago. And actually, you know what? I think this was in Edutopia, but it's a great article called The Reading Wars, Choice versus Canon. And it just came out last year. And it really talks about the strength of choice reading. And it really talks about the importance of those canonical texts. So I love this quote that educators are starting to find some equilibrium, some balance between choice and a regimented list of must reads. Shakespeare can indeed exist in a class alongside books that kids want to read. And I want you to know that each of these links that I've got for you in these slides, I know that you can't interact with them in this Screencastify, but I'm also going to link these slides lower in the module so that you can access these great reads if you want to take your learning further. The second part of this mini lesson is really about why student choice is necessary. Just take this graphic in for a moment. Don't you just dream of your students seeing books as all of these things? I know books have provided that for each one of us, or we probably wouldn't have chosen ELAR as a content that we thought was important enough to dedicate our lives to. And our greatest dream is that students would also be able to see them in the text, themselves in the text they read, be able to see their text as windows into the human condition of others, be able to use their literacy as leverage to help them fly where they want to go, help them find comfort in a world that is a little uncertain at times. Donald Miller, who's seen as the guru, really, of choice reading, although the reading wars have been going on long before she started writing. Anyway, in her popular book, The Book Whisperer, she talks about how she realized that it was her job in every lesson, conference, response, and assignment that she taught when she was in the classroom, that she had to lead students away from her as the guru, as the facilitator of all literacy, and towards their autonomy as literate people. And if she didn't do that, then they might only be tricked into loving reading as long as they were in her classroom. It really has to become a fundamental shift in how they perceive books. I also want to make sure that you know what the research says. If we're going to invest the money in classroom libraries and we're going to invest the time in trying to figure out how to give up parts of our class time to allowing students to read, and we're going to figure out how to match them up with the right book so that they can fall in love with reading, you need to know what the payoff is going to be beyond the idealism of growing readers, right? The research talks about in the first article I've linked here that we do indeed, like I've been talking about, want to produce students who love to read. We also want to make sure that it extends to their writing. That second source there from Anderson talks about how it not only enhances creativity, but it also translates to better revision and editing and organization of their writing. And then an incredible International Literacy Association article is linked there on the right of the screen. Man, we talk about this all the time, how students just lack the mental stamina, right? Not just in a testing situation, but just to engage in anything over the length of a social media post. Am I correct? So again, these links down at the bottom of each of these quotes are going to be available to you in the slide deck that I link at the bottom of the module, because you won't be able to interact with the links here in the Screencastify. All right, TEKS alignment. I know for you middle school teachers that have been teaching with the new TEKS for a year, you may know these incredibly well. And heck, even at the high school level, you guys have been through trainings enough with me that you might be able to recite them like the back of your hand. But I think it's really important that we always be at the ready for anything we choose to do in our classroom, for it to be directly aligned to supporting our grade level standards. And we happen to have quite a few standards that self-selected reading directly supports. We have our new kindergarten through 12th grade strand that talks about every student being expected to self-select text and read independently for a sustained period of time. That's the one that's most obviously connected to this initiative. But we also have several comprehension skills standards, one being making inferences. Those of you who have ever heard me talk before know that this is my broken record mantra, right? Students make complex inferences every single day. The only reason they cannot make complex inferences when they approach grade level text is because of a lack of background knowledge if they're reading at grade level. So helping them read widely, giving them access to texts that take them beyond their own circumstance, and reading about contents that they have not had personal experience with is a direct way to support this standard of making inferences and using text evidence to support understanding. Another comprehension skills standard is making connections, not only to personal experiences, they can all do that, but ideas in other texts. And the more widely they have read, the more other texts they can make connections to. Then in the response skills strand, making personal connections to a variety of sources, including self-selected text. That's right there, kindergarten through 12th grade in our new standards. And there's more. Another skill in the comprehension strand, establishing a purpose for both reading assigned and self-selected text. In the response strand, respond using newly acquired vocabulary as appropriate. You may be thinking, well, that doesn't say anything about self-selected text, but I'm here to tell you, the only way to expand your vocabulary beyond the lexicon that your parents use and beyond the lexicon that your direct sphere uses is to read widely. And the more exposure to words that are unfamiliar to you, the more you can retain them and put them into your own personal lexicon. Another vocabulary skill that this directly supports is determining usage and meaning of grade level academic English because of the widespread exposure to new words and common derivations across texts. And then lastly, and I know that this initiative supports more than these standards, but I didn't want to just exhaust you all. And so I just added one about author's purpose and craft. And this verbiage comes straight from the strand that is over kindergarten through 12th grade, not a specific student expectation, but the strand itself, that students are to use critical inquiry to analyze authors' choices and how they influence and communicate meaning within a variety of texts. Again, a plea to have students reading widely. All right, so let's get started. Now that we know the what and we know the why of balanced literacy and how self-selected texts, self-selected reading really enhances that goal, we want to hear from people who have experience using this in their classroom. So we're about to listen to our panelists' expertise today in the panel discussion. Both Jacob Chastain and Angie Gruber have years of experience at the middle school and high school level supporting student choice reading in their classroom. As you're listening to them, begin to imagine how you might engage students with choice reading starting this fall. Our new classroom libraries will be ready and waiting for you. Hopefully 100% of them will be right there waiting for you when we return to school in the fall. And then another couple of ideas that I wanted to include here is some books that are written to support this cause. Donald Miller has a few. Stephanie Harvey has a few. I'm noticing that Stephanie Harvey's text is not italicized. The title isn't italicized on this slide, and that's going to drive me crazy. But this recording's gone well so far, and so I'm going to let it ride. You're going to have to give me some grace on that. And then number 3, if you haven't already begun to develop your professional learning network through social media, if you choose to participate in social media, I've included a few Twitter finds for you, both a hashtag Project Lit that's been around for years, and this is a specific hashtag assigned to posts from teachers that are experimenting with classroom libraries and independent reading. And then also, I wanted to hook you up with Donald Miller. She is prolific right now, all over speaking on these matters, and she posts some incredibly relevant content in her social media. Also, Kylie Beers, I know many of you are familiar with her, and she is like-minded on this subject. And then Cicely Lewis is a name you may not know. She is the 2020 National Librarian in the U.S., and she has a great Twitter feed. She also has a project called Read Woke, that really specifically highlights the importance of students from that are often given less of a voice, being able to see themselves in text and putting relevant text in their hands as well. And so now it is time for you to jump out of this video and continue your learning in our session. Thank you so much once again for joining me for this learning, and I really hope you enjoy the conversation with Jacob Chastain and Angie Gruber.